What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA Saturday, February 6th. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, let's take a look at the point guard position. I like Cole Anthony from the Orlando Magic playing the Chicago Bulls, who have the 11th worst defense overall, and they give up the second most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Cole Anthony has averaged 23.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 27 minutes per game with a 22% usage rate. He scored 37, 26, and 29 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 32, 30, and 32 minutes. He's projected at 25.4 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. He's 5,000 FanDuel salary and 700 more on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 223.5 points scored in this game, so I like Cole Anthony here versus the Chicago Bulls. Another point guard that I like is Dennis Schroeder from the LA Lakers playing the Detroit Pistons, who have the 10th worst defense overall, and they give up the 13th most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Dennis Schroeder has averaged 25.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 22% usage rate. He scored 26, 27, and 27 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 29, 29, and 33 minutes. He's projected at 25.3 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.9 times value. He's 5,200 DraftKings salary and 400 more on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 218 points scored in this game, so I like Dennis Schroeder here versus the Detroit Pistons. I just want to note that Dennis Schroeder has scored 20, 40, 22, 39, and 31 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Detroit Pistons. So I think that's pretty good player versus team history. I like this matchup. I think his salary is low enough where he can get you value, or he can score 30 plus fantasy points and get you 5 times value or more. So I think he's a nice play here tonight. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I like Dillon Brooks from the Memphis Grizzlies playing the New Orleans Pelicans, who have the 9th worst defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing shooting guards. Dillon Brooks has averaged 26.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 29 minutes per game with a 28% usage rate. He scored 14, 40, and 21 fantasy points in his last 3 games, playing 27, 27, and 22 minutes. So you can see that he has a low floor and a high ceiling, but he's projected at 25.2 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.3 times value. He's 4,800 FanDuel salary and 700 more on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 227.5 points scored in this game, and Dillon Brooks has scored 24, 25, and 53 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Pelicans. So I like Dillon Brooks here versus the New Orleans Pelicans. Okay, another shooting guard that I like, especially on DraftKings, is DeMar DeRozan from the San Antonio Spurs playing the Houston Rockets, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, but they give up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. DeMar DeRozan has averaged 38 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 24% usage rate. He scored 47, 30, and 7 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 40, 29, and 25 minutes. I would just throw that 7 right out the window. That's not his average game. That's an outlier. You can forget about that performance. He's projected at 37.9 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.9 times value. He's 7,800 FanDuel salary, but he's 600 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. Vegas thinks there's going to be 222.5 points scored in this game. So I like DeMar DeRozan here versus the Houston Rockets. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I'm going to give you a value play here. I like Danny Green from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the Brooklyn Nets, who have the 5th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. Danny Green has averaged 21.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 28 minutes per game with a 15% usage rate. He scored 10, 30, and 17 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 26, 30, and 21 minutes. He's projected at 20.9 fantasy points here tonight, and that's 5.5 times value. He's 3,800 FanDuel salary and 200 more on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 237.5 points scored in this game. Fantastic matchup here. This feels like a Danny Green game. I think he can get 25 or more fantasy points in this game and crush value. So I like Danny Green here versus the Brooklyn Nets.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on.
Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups. Okay, another small forward that I like is Juan Toscano Anderson from the Golden State Warriors playing the Dallas Mavericks, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, but they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. Juan has scored 35 and 26 fantasy points in the last 2 games, playing 39 and 26 minutes. He's projected at 21.9 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's only 4.1 times value because he's 5,400 FanDuel salary, but he's 1,200 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. Probably only a DraftKings play for me. Could play him on FanDuel, but I'm going to stick to him on DraftKings only. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 230 points scored in this game. So I like Juan Toscano Anderson here versus the Dallas Mavericks. Okay, let's take a look at the power forward position. I like John Collins from the Atlanta Hawks playing the Toronto Raptors, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing power forwards. John Collins has averaged 32.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 21% usage rate. He scored 32, 49, and 29 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 31, 39, and 35 minutes. He's projected at 34.6 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's only 6,900 FanDuel salary, and he's 500 more on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 222 points scored in this game, so I like John Collins here versus the Toronto Raptors. Another power forward that I like, I'm going to give you a value play here. I like Isaiah Roby from the Oklahoma City Thunder playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have the 2nd worst defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing power forwards. Isaiah Roby has averaged 19 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 20 minutes per game with an 18% usage rate. he scored 37, 19, and 17 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 33, 18, and 11 minutes. So his minutes and his production have been all over the place. This is a high risk, high reward play here, but he's projected at 17.5 fantasy points here tonight. Now that's only 4.5 times value, but if he gets anything close to the 33 minutes that he got last game, you can expect him to hit value or exceed value here. And he's only 3,900 FanDuel salary, and he's 200 less on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 218.5 points scored in this game, so I like Isaiah Roby here versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. Okay, moving on to the center position. I like Al Horford from the Oklahoma City Thunder playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have the second worst defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing centers. Al Horford has averaged 31.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 27 minutes per game with a 22% usage rate. He scored 59, 28, and 33 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 29, 29, and 25 minutes. He's projected at 31.3 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. He's 6,100 FanDuel salary and 400 more on DraftKings. So I like Al Horford here versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. The other center that I like Joel Embiid from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the Brooklyn Nets, who have the 5th worst defense overall, and they give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Joel Embiid has averaged 50.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 33% usage rate. He scored 46 and 55 fantasy points in the last 2 games, playing 33 and 33 minutes. He's projected at 51.3 fantasy points here tonight. That's 4.9 times value. He's 10,500 FanDuel salary and the same price on DraftKings. So we know Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game. 237.5 points scored in this game. It's a fast-paced game. Joel Embiid could very easily get 50 to 60 plus fantasy points here in this matchup. So I like Joel Embiid here versus the Brooklyn Nets.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.